How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, live today on Thursday, May the 30th, to run down a couple of topics I have on hand for you guys here to start the show. We're going to talk about Jaylen Waddle and his new extension that he received just this morning from the Miami Dolphins. And also, we're going to touch on more wide receiver group rankings, this time in the NFC South. We're going to be talking Panthers, Saints, Buccaneers, and Falcons. Where do they all land in my rankings? Plus, more on the Buffalo Bills offense. How do they sort of maneuver now with all these new weapons, still trying to incorporate them into an offense based around Josh Allen? I got some quotes here from their new offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, and how he plans on doing that. A lot of good stuff on today's agenda, so stick around and make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And also, as a reminder, if you have any questions or comments you want to make, please make sure to use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net, that you see on your screen there. By using this link, I can see your question or comment pop up on my screen, and that way I can read it on air and get your guys' perspective or just overall opinion on anything I say or on any of the topics we talk about on today's show. It's a massive help for this program, as well as all the other shows across the network. So please, again, make sure to use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net. But now we can jump into the first segment I have on hand, getting into the contract for the Dolphins wide receiver Jaylen Waddle. Announced this morning, the Dolphins and Jaylen Waddle agreed to a 3-year, $84.75 million extension with $76 million guaranteed. If you do the math on that contract, Jaylen Waddle will be making $28.25 million per year, which would equate to him now being the fourth highest paid wide receiver based on annual salary. He just makes the list right under Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill obviously at $30 million per year. Jaylen Waddle now slides in right behind him and just ahead of Devontae Adams, $28 million per year. And now the Miami Dolphins have two of the top 5 highest paid wide receivers in the entire NFL. And how this all sort of broke down, if you remember at some point this offseason, I know I touched on it in a YouTube Shorts video or just in general on this live episode, that the Dolphins picked up the 5th-year option to Jaylen Waddle's contract while also picking up the 5th-year option to their pass rusher, Jaelan Phillips. They did that around the same time, and they did have some time to sort of waste here because this was the first offseason that Jaylen Waddle really became eligible. So he had one more year left on his 4-year rookie contract that would have been on the last year next season, plus they still had that 5th-year option. So they had some good amount of time here to maneuver through, but good for them for getting this deal done earlier. Now they don't have to worry about it, and they keep both of their main offensive threats on their roster probably for the next 4 to 5 years based on these contract extensions and how successful they will be going forward because of this. And now $84.75 million is a lot of money, and some people might be wondering now, is that, too much maybe for Jaylen Waddle? If you're not familiar too much with him, you don't watch many Miami Dolphins games potentially, so you wouldn't have the chance to really evaluate how good he has been, so I thought I'd give you guys some context here. Since he was drafted number 6 overall in 2021, how good has he been for the Miami Dolphins? Well, since he entered the NFL in that year in 2021, he's recorded 251 receptions, 18 touchdowns, and of his 47 games that he has played in his career so far, 10 have been of 100 yards or more. So if you do the math, that's about 20% of his games have been at least 100-yard games or more, which is pretty high, honestly, for a guy that's only been in the league 3 years. To have at least 20% of your games be 100-yard games or more is very impactful and very crucial to this Miami Dolphins offense. So that's one thing. And in only 3 years in the NFL as well, he already has 2 franchise records for the Miami Dolphins for the most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. All 3 of his years consecutively in the NFL have been 1,000 yards. So that's very impressive in it of its own. And also, he has the most receiving yards in the first 3 seasons of his career for the Miami Dolphins at 3,385. Already, as soon as he came out of Alabama, already making a massive impact for the Miami Dolphins and just in and around the league as well, making a name for himself for sure. And also, talking about the entire league, talking about how he's made an impact in the NFL. When he came out that first year, in his rookie year, he actually set the rookie record for the most receptions in your first season at 104 before Puka Nacua broke it last season at 105. So, heartbreaking there to see your record be broken by only 1 reception. But, it just flows into the conversation of Jaylen Waddle really built and really made right from Alabama. No secret how they produce all this talent. Really one of the easiest transitions that you've seen recently in a few years. Probably most similar to Devontae Smith as well. Both of those guys, I think, since they were drafted, have really made a massive impact for their teams. And it's funny how both of them are in very similar situations now where they're looked at as the number 2 receivers on their teams, but really they could be number 1s on a lot of different teams around the NFL, and also they're competing to try and be that number 1 receiver with a guy like A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill, who are 2 of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. So if you actually look at it in terms of money, you have A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and now Jaylen Waddle as 3 of the top 5 highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. Devontae Smith is a little bit further down the list, but it doesn't take away from how impactful these 2 tandems are to their respective teams, and probably 2 of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL. Now, Jaylen Waddle is certainly getting paid like it, and just based on all the stuff that I just mentioned to you guys, all his stats and his records in 2023 as well, this past year he recorded 72 receptions, just over 1,000 yards again, and 4 touchdowns. Struggled a little bit with injury, missing a couple games, but it didn't stop him from continuing that steady production of 1,000 yards, 1,000 yards, and 1,000 yards. So if you don't really pay attention to Jaylen Waddle, those numbers are off the charts. And to me, to give my opinion on it now, is it too much? Is it the right move? All the timing around it, I would probably say it's right around where you'd hope for Jaylen Waddle because of, like I mentioned, those numbers that he's putting up and how impactful he has been for the Miami Dolphins and that connection that he has with Tua based on their time playing together at Alabama. I don't think you could just find that anywhere. And to give him and pay him now like a top wide receiver that he is, I think $28 million around that range is right around where you'd want it to be. And it is great business, again, by the Miami Dolphins because not only do you have him on that 3-year extension, which you might think, 3 years, that's not really ideal. Well, he still has that rookie deal or that rookie year left, on his rookie deal, plus the 5th-year option that they picked up. Then they have the 3 years added on to his contract. So it really just pans out to be almost like a 5 or 4-year deal here for $28 million per year on that annual salary that will start after the 5th-year option year. So it'll be 1 more year on his rookie deal, then the 5th-year option where he'll be paid a certain amount of money, and then you get into the $28 million per year annual salary, which is good business, like I mentioned, for the Miami Dolphins because not only do they get him for an extended period of time, not just those 3 years, but also because they got this deal done ahead of all these other teams that need to work out their situations with their wide receivers. You think of now Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, not so much Justin Jefferson because I expect him to be the highest paid anyway, so it doesn't really matter what Jaylen Waddle was going to get paid anyway, but more so for Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, and CeeDee Lamb. I think all those guys, maybe not CeeDee Lamb as much, but really those 3 guys were going to be around the same price range because they have been producing around the same amount of production since they came into the league. They're all roughly around the same age as well. And now Jaylen Waddle comes in and sort of sets this new landmark of the minimum amount that these wide receivers would probably think they deserve to be paid. Whereas if you got these deals done before, obviously maybe you could have got it done for $26 million per year, maybe $27 million. Now, these guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking and looking at this contract of Jaylen Waddle and thinking, well, if he's getting 28, I'm at least worth that, or maybe even more. I'm sure CeeDee Lamb certainly thinks that. Brandon Ayuk, I'm sure, probably thinks around the same, at least minimum for that set amount of money. I mentioned it before. He wants maybe, according to the reports, around the same amount that Amon-Ra St. Brown got, and he was at $30 million as well. So this just adds more pressure to those other teams and maybe just pushing it out of their budget where they're just taking a little bit too long here now, where it's now getting a little bit tight money-wise, where you have to start making some tough decisions. And speaking of tough decisions, this doesn't really get the Dolphins out of the woods just yet because they still have to work out a contract extension for their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. That's still been on hold for a little bit. Not too much has been made of that since we last talked about it, but if I was to put it in a tier ranking on who would I have absolutely wanted to keep if I only had to have one of them, Jaylen Waddle and Tua, I think the Dolphins got it right and extended Jaylen before Tua because he has proven it consecutively since he got into the NFL. So getting his deal done first makes sense. And now you can get into Tua because he has produced very well this past season. So he is riding a little bit of momentum and a little bit more leverage there. But Jaylen Waddle, like I said, has done it, has shown more consistency. So doing him first, I think, really is the right move. And now, when you have your numbers settled, when you have everything sort of under control now, now you can get into Tua and work out a fair number for the both of you based off of how this new salary cap looks now that you have Jaylen Waddle under contract for the foreseeable future. And also, one last nugget of information that I thought was pretty interesting. The $76 million guaranteed to Jaylen Waddle is now the third all-time highest for a wide receiver. And it's funny because the two other highest in NFL history for a wide receiver are the new deal that A.J. Brown got. He got $84 million guaranteed. That's the most ever for a wide receiver. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, second in NFL history with guaranteed money at $77 million guaranteed. All three of these deals were just done within 2 months of each other. So this crazy money is being thrown around a lot nowadays. And some players are going to get a chance to do it, and some teams are going to miss out on the opportunity because these prices are getting jacked up so high as of right now based on everybody else. So that's where it stands. A lot of money going to Jaylen Waddle, much deserved. You know, we're not going to hate on it. He definitely deserved it. Now the Dolphins have two of their best receivers on contract and on their roster, and the clock is ticking for these other teams for sure. But we're going to leave it there, and we're going to move on with the rest of the show. The next topic, we're going to continue on with our wide receiver group rankings, this time looking at the NFC North and where some of these young groups land and some of these veteran players as well. How do they impact the rankings? That is coming up in just a few seconds. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.